Green Goddess Delights. Edibles, topicals, remedies using only whole plant cannabis formulas for real green healing, mind, body, and soul. Providing patient-to-patient safe access. Find us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook for details and information. Green Goddess Delights.
Do you need a medical marijuana recommendation like I did? Do what I did. CanacareDocs.com. Compassionate, compliant, and confidential. Go where I went, Mike Can, to get my medical recommendation in Massachusetts. CanacareDocs.com. If you're suffering like I am from back pain, or maybe you have MS, post-traumatic stress, seizures, AIDS, cancer, glaucoma. If you're suffering from pain like I am daily, call CanacareDocs.com. It's a much safer way to go. No opiates. You want medical legal cannabis? CanacareDocs.com. Convenient. 9 Massachusetts locations. Peabody, Quincy, Waltham, Brockton, Stoughton, South Dennis, Cape Cod, Fall River, and Worcester. Also, I forgot, Seekonk. Also in the states of Delaware, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maine, and coming soon to New Hampshire and New York. It's CanacareDocs.com. Get your medical recommendation. Get legal. CanacareDocs.com.
We're the Young Jerks on WEMF Radio.
Welcome, we're live with the Young Jerks on WEMF Radio. My name is Mike Crawford. Sitting next to me is Lauren
Pespisa.
Pepsi.
Lauren Pepsi, or Splendid Spoon, as many on the internet used to know me.
And I want to just note that we were all on to, we went to a lot of us went to a party together.
That's right.
Today, and we got here early through a traffic argument, or whatever they call that, a traffic catastrophe in Boston. We got here early.
Yes,
and we were
we
waiting,
did.
and the show was a little late because of the show before us, and not us. We were on time.
Yes, we were.
We're on time.
We were. Right, Herb? Right, boss man?
Yeah.
The producer says yes, we were. We were on time for once. I just want to make note of that. We're trying. We're the Young Jerks. We're here every Saturday at 6 p.m. We have a special guest on the phone. So, I don't know. Do you want to introduce this? Do you have something built up for this, Lauren?
Yeah, well, I think we kind of both do, because actually one of the first times we did a show together, Mike, was when we discussed this person.
Well, you could say that we met because of this.
Yeah.
It's true, because
Yeah.
I saw the story about it, and I realized there were some local people who knew the individual.
Yes.
And what was happening with him, and I just discovered it, and you were one of the first. You and Greg.
Yeah, me and Greg.
Came on the old show with Frank and I believe. What was it?
No,
Heather.
it was Heather.
Heather
It was
and I,
Heather.
my co-host then. It was the Two Hothead show on
Right.
regular radio.
Right.
And yeah, we had you on because of this person that we're gonna have on the show right now, right?
We were trying to support him at the time.
That's right.
This person is a newly released journalist who has been persecuted because of basically doing his job as a, investigative journalist, and also a friend of mine. And I don't know, I'm getting tongue-tied already, so here it is.
I want to say over-prosecuted too.
Ridiculous.
What they do is
yeah.
they just pile on, and
Yeah.
they lie, they cheat, they steal, they act like criminals.
Yes.
The government, the prosecutors. I'll say it today. I don't care.
I mean,
I'm as clean as they come. If you do anything to me, I'm not telling you. Like, seriously, I'd take no chances, and except on the First Amendment here.
yeah,
I
well,
think
that's
you got
basically what it
screwed.
was. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know. I feel like without further ado, we have on the show today Barrett Brown. Thank you for coming on. Big
Give him
round
a
of
round
applause.
of applause. Welcome, Barrett.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. So how are you, Barrett? How was our intro, first of all?
It was very long.
It was very long. I know, right? I know.
And
I know.
loud.
And loud.
It touched upon a lot of different things. So I feel like you guys got a lot of ground covered there.
All right, cool. So basically, since we were discussing your case when we last had a show about you, even in your absence, I guess we should bring the viewers and the listeners up to speed on like where you are currently. So if you could just go into that a little bit.
Yeah. So 9 months ago or so, I was released from prison after doing 4 years on a number of charges that I pled to. And since then, I've been, before I got involved with Anonymous back in 2010, I was trying to put something together called Project PM. Now, Project PM, you'll see in a lot of the articles, including those some of you which you've been quoted in. When you worked with us, Project PM was an intelligence contracting crowdsourced investigation, as in we were looking into these issues that had come up after an anonymous hack on this firm called H.B. Gary, when they exposed this very bizarre conspiracy by the DOJ, by other corporations to go after journalists and activists. And in the aftermath of that, there was some news coverage, and one of the fellows had to resign. Investigation was called for on the floor of Congress, but that was quickly closed down. And we kept going. We understood that the dynamics of the media are such that these stories, even if there's more there that needs to be covered, and even if nothing has really been achieved yet, in terms of getting the government to rein itself in. These things just need a little extra boost of attention. And so we went about going through these emails that have been stolen, that have just sort of been gleaned a little bit by the mainstream press, and we compiled everything we could find from those emails and from other emails that were stolen by Anonymous later on, and from public sources of information, patents, tax records, in order to paint a picture of this intelligence contracting industry, this public-private alliance of espionage and surveillance and black operations directed at democracy. And so that went on for a while, as you recall. And then I was eventually raided, and then later on arrested and indicted and all that. And the great thing about that was the way in which they came after me. It was enough that even real slow on the uptake outlets like the New York Times, Time Magazine, eventually understood that something was wrong here. And that the way they were coming after me didn't make any sense unless it was in the context of retaliation for the things that we had uncovered. And
I think they even got scared as journalists
of what we had uncovered.
Right? Even they got scared because they're like, if it starts with a Barrett Brown, who's next? Like someone that doesn't, you're a journalist. Like this is not, you weren't a hacker. You were a journalist covering real stuff. Like I got horrified by what happened to you. And then some of the stuff that you uncovered was amazing. Like people are still talking about it. Like the what were we talking about? This bot thing with an enterprise.
That was persona management.
Persona management stuff.
Yeah, all the surveillance technology, Dragnet surveillance.
That people didn't know about.
Barrett and his research have been vindicated by a lot of other leaks and information that have come out since.
Do you think people are using that, like corporations or governments? Who's using that, like kind of that bot technology on forums on the internet?
Persona management, we know, for instance, we know that CENTCOM is using it. We know some of the companies that have built these kind of programs for either to compete for bids from the governments or to cater to other companies. But our data kind of stops right there. It stops at the very end of 2010 because that's when the emails were taken. And we haven't really, from that we were able to kind of piece together some things, find some patents that gave us a little bit more insight into what it does, what its extent was, and from that kind of glean, this is something that's clearly going to expand. It's something that's clearly useful. It's what it is essentially is the ability for a single human operator to control, say, 15 to 20 fake online personas. So these aren't just sock puppets where you're sitting there having to handle all these conversations yourself. The software helps you to manage, what conversations you've had with each persona, as each persona with other people. It does a great deal to make it easier to send these fictional beings out and have them interact with people, infiltrate, manufacture events, that sort of thing. And we don't know a great deal beyond that, but we can extrapolate and say that what else we've seen.
Right.
We know that there's lots of companies that would benefit financially from producing further versions of this, and there's lots of other companies not in that sector that would very much like to be able to go after their enemies in the public using this kind of information software. And so we can assume this is expanded, that it will be more refined in the future, that it will get better. And we're entering a period of potentially great confusion with all of these, not just persona management, but other apparatus becoming more widely available to all these actors. So it was important, but it's not my main emphasis now. It's something we're gonna pick that up pretty soon, incidentally. Right. But Project PM, before we got into all that, before we kind of ran into this issue in this very dramatic way, my original intent was to build a framework, a sort of a civic collaboration framework that would allow this sort of information age advantage we have of being able to collaborate with anybody else on the planet, to kind of take that to the next step and make it more rigorous, make it take the agility that you saw with Anonymous, for instance, where people can very quickly come in and get their ideas implemented and get things done in a way where you're running circles around institutions. And Anonymous did that quite a bit. Right. But take it a step further where it's more rigorous, where it's not something that's going to burn itself out. And so the pursuant system which is what I've been talking about since I got out. That's going to be set up and instituted in the next few months. There's some information about how that works at pursuanceproject.org. People can also sign up to be considered for participation. And there'll be some more, and there've been a couple of articles in Wired and all that about this in the last 9 months, and there'll be a couple of documentaries, a couple of broadcasts on NPR, PBS, and Vice that'll go into this in the next few months as well.
Pursuance.org, that's it?
Pursuance is what it's spelled. Pursuanceproject.org.
Oh, project.
Yeah.
I forgot that. Project.org. Perfect. Pursuance.
And this is something that you'd been speaking about even in 2014. I remember. This is something that you've had a long time, as your experience with Project PM and with doing these kind of activities. I think this is sort of like you've come up with a lot of, you've seen what doesn't work too, right?
Yeah, I mean, you and I have both had the opportunity to see up close and work on these things and see the various methods that are kind of in use right now in terms of collaborative research and collaborative activism. And we can see, obviously Project PM, as the investigation was very haphazard. It was an IRC channel, but we made it work. We just happened to be able to get people in there who were very useful, who were willing to work on these things long term, and we compiled the website that presented all these things for journalists who wanted to look into these issues. And it was successful enough that the FBI came down very hard on it. The search warrants that were executed on my place, they listed specifically Project PM in the Echelon2.org wiki and HP Gary and Endgame Systems, two of the firms that we had uncovered wrongdoing by, as subjects for search. Stratfor, incidentally, which I was later actually charged for, which was overseen itself, a hack that was overseen by the FBI itself.
Exactly.
Was not even mentioned on that search warrant. That's not really what this is about. The grand jury search warrants that I didn't know about until later began shortly after, early 2011, after we'd uncovered DOJ's wrongdoing. That's what this was about.
Right.
And they're still giving you a hard time about that now, about the fine that they have that you have to pay in terms of your income.
For one thing, I was rearrested a few months ago for doing interviews. They found out I was doing an interview with Vice Television and one next week with PBS for a documentary coming up, and they told me I couldn't do it without permission, and I told them that was not true and referred them to the relevant BOP articles on that.
It was so
I've been doing interviews without permission, obviously, from prison. So instead of saying, okay, we're wrong, they just had me rearrested by the U.S. Marshals, and then a law firm up in New York challenged them, said they were going to take it to court and have them explain why I was being confined, and rather than having to explain that, they just let me go.
It's so bizarre.
And then more recently, they've sent subpoenas to The Intercept and to my literary agent, Writer's House up in New York, demanding all communications and all financial records, ostensibly to make sure I'm paying my restitution properly. In fact, they have my bank account. They have, they have access to all my financial records. My probation officer, who's supposed to be overseeing my restitution payments, doesn't know what this is about. It's very irregular. And I actually called up the office and recorded conversation, sort of caught them off guard and asked them these questions, how this makes sense and all that. And they really weren't able to articulate that very well. So that's the kind of stuff that just comes with the territory, and we'll see more of it.
We're going to give out our phone number in a second, but we just noticed something that we want to give our... I'm a jerk, Barrett, especially when we have mistakes on the show. I wrote down specifically what write on our Facebook Live for your name, and of course Herbie misspelled it. We found out he misspelled your name, Barrett. Can you believe that?
I believe it.
Should I whip him? Should we kick him down the street? Like, what should we do to our producer? Wait, now is it me?
You can get a job at the New York Times.
That is two T's.
You get a job at the New York Times.
I've noticed there's a lot of factual errors, even by relatively good journalists with major publications.
He could do the Globe, too.
So just getting my name wrong is actually not that bad.
Really? Okay. Because now he's showing me the paper. They as evidence that I misspelled it, but I didn't. I wrote it right. It's on the paper. Now he realizes. It took him a little while. He realizes his error. Wow. He definitely could work for the New York Times. Where do you write for a lot of places? Where do you write again, Barrett?
Well, these days I only write. I'm just starting back up this column for The Intercept that I did from prison.
Nice.
The one I won the National Magazine Award for. I'm just starting that up again with an announcement piece on the sort of the official announcement of the Pursuance system, explaining case behind it. But beyond that, I'm just working on this book coming out next year. Previously, I wrote for The Guardian pretty regularly, wrote for Huffington Post, Vanity Fair, New York Press. I had a column in Skeptical Inquirer, wrote for Skeptic Magazine, just other sort of things, Daily Beast one time. But yeah, these days I'm just working on this book, which is going to cover all these issues,
Awesome.
and the last third of which will explain the pursuant system itself, and also this broader concept we're trying to push of what we call process democracy, as opposed to institutional democracy.
Oh, perfect.
Emergent, online, sort of process-based
Right.
structures by which to counter institutions.
I love this.
Which,
This sounds so great.
Which groups like the Pirate Party are taking a lot of interest in as well,
I think
correct?
humans want this too, right?
Yeah, we're setting up a board of directors and all that, and I'll announce the actual names in this column. But yes, we're already known. We've already made it known that we're working with certain facets of the Pirate Party, some of the national parties, as well as the Pirate Party International Board, and they'll be providing some assistance. And I think they'll be helping us to bring in people who are going to be real solid for this system. This is an invitation-only system. It's not like a new Facebook or a new link based on the concept that if only the people's voice was heard, and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
50% of this country is essentially either fascist or objectively pro-fascist. So this is something that when you consider participation, you come in with the understanding that you are opposed to the police state, you're opposed to the drug war,
Right.
you're opposed to the surveillance state. And so we're not asking for total ideological unity. You can be capitalist, anti-capitalist, anarcho-capitalist, communist, anarchist, Democrat, even I guess a Republican once in a while, Libertarian, Green Party, whatever, so long as you agree with this basic framework, so long as you're somebody who's an evidence-based thinker. We start with that, and we let each person who comes in, they have the right to bring in others. You're going to maintain a certain degree of a certain framework, a certain agreed framework that will serve as a basis for cooperation going forward on other issues.
Excellent. We're speaking of Barrett Brown. We're the Young Jerks on WEMF Radio. You can also watch us on our Facebook page. Pursuanceproject.org is his new, what do we call this? Your new project, your new gig, your new...
Yeah. This is. It's grown out of my old ideas from 2009. When Project PM was originally supposed to do something like this, and then then we got cut up with Anonymous and blah blah. And I got busy with prison. But this is the culmination of all that. But it's a new organization. It's not Project PM per such, but it does draw upon those things. It draws upon Anonymous. It draws upon telecomics. Some of these
Right.
lesser known but very successful collaborations we've seen. But it is a new project. Yes.
Those who came before and paved the way. I actually was wondering, I know you posted recently about what Jeff Sessions said about harassing journalists, about, their sources, which will now be the DOJ policy. And do you think it will affect your work, or do you think this has always been the policy? Like, what do you make of that statement, I guess, coming from your perspective?
Well, you have DOJ policy officially, and then you have DOJ shadow policy.
Right.
And DOJ shadow policy has been sufficient for them to do largely whatever they like. I think this new policy, I think it's more about setting the tone, just sort of telling the prosecutors, here, you can go ahead and now do this more, and we're going to back you up on it. And so I think it's a matter of extent rather than a fundamental change. I think
Right.
the way they're doing it is going to come back to haunt them. They're picking an overt fight with the press rather than just sort of piecemeal going after individual journalists in a way that doesn't necessarily evoke a strong reaction. They're doing about the entirely wrong way from a pragmatic point, from their point of view.
Even to accomplish their goals.
I'm happy about it, frankly.
Okay, so you think this is sort of like a big reveal? They shouldn't have shown those cards yet.
Yes.
That's good. That's good. But do you think this will affect how you go about your work currently?
No, very little of what I do right now really involves sources at all.
Right.
Right now, it's mostly a matter of compiling all these things that are out there but not presented to a large audience. That's what this book is about. And the column I do for The Intercept is really, I don't do a whole lot of traditional journalism these days.
Right.
There's just so much that's happened that needs to be reconfigured and represented.
Right.
It's very fundamentally important. And plus, I'm really more of a commentator than a journalist anyway. My job is to take these pieces and present a certain case, against the system and to propose solutions that are, people are going to agree are viable. That's my position. So, the column I write, for instance, it's mostly about making fun of other journalists.
That's right.
So it doesn't affect me at all, but I'll
Right.
be affected by other ongoing DOJ policies, like criminality and lack of respect for the rule of law. Those are things that are kind of universal
Right.
to our government, and
So,
go ahead, Warren. You want to ask a question?
so for our new listeners who are just hearing of you for the first time, you're a whistleblower that was arrested and charged with 100 years of crimes for.
I don't think he was charged with that, but
Yeah,
he
he
was
was
threatened with a
facing
long
that,
time.
yeah.
Right? How many years were you looking at, Barrett?
if you take the total, the maximum of each charge, each count that I was hit with from the beginning, I was facing 105 years total worth of charges. But realistically, what that means is that even if I would have been looking at really just a couple decades. Even if we had managed to get some dismissed, but some not, and then gone to court, I would have been, realistically gotten 20, 30 years. That's very common in the federal system.
And what did you blow the whistle on that made them do that?
Well, it was more of a thing where I went beyond the traditional purview of a journalist. And that's important to emphasize is that I'm not really interested in defending journalism against state interference. I think that's something that even the American people, even in their sorry state of today, are capable of kind of doing themselves. I'm more interested in defending the rights of a citizen to engage in enhanced civil disobedience.
There you go.
To engage in technically illegal counterattacks against government institutions that have started out by committing crimes against you. This case was very much, this is very emblematic of that. And we had a situation in which the government had been involved in, one second.
Well, you know what? Are you still there, Barrett?
I charged my phone. I guess. Sorry.
Okay.
So I mean, this was more of a situation where this was more about a matter of sort of self-defense, civic self-defense. To what extent, when the government itself is committing crimes against you and against other journalists and against activists, and only being exposed by hackers, people who are technically committing crimes, to expose these things. To what extent is it you're not just your right but your duty to organize resistance against that government? That's what,
Right.
to me, this case was all about.
And what the line
we have plenty
is,
of
too.
whistleblowers out there who have made the case for whistleblowing in a sort of very limited sense, and leakers and that sort of thing, and that's important. But my emphasis, I never wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be revolutionary.
Right. And it's about the line too. Like you kind of went up to the line, and like there's a line, and whether you agree with the line or not, like you what you did took balls, and you paid the price, and I like think they way overreacted. I would never want to see you in jail for anything. Like what you did, I thought was just it's a joke. Like, give me a freaking break in the end. That's how I feel about it. And I didn't mean to rehash your whole trial and your whole last years, but I know Warren and a lot of people don't know a lot about it, so they want to ask about that. But I want to ask about some of the stuff going forward, because, like, where do you see yourself going forward? Would you ever run for office? Are you going to continue to be the journalist, the revolutionary you are? Like, where do you see yourself, like, now in 5-10 years? Down the line, Barrett Brown.
I think politics is in a different state right now. You don't have to run for office. You can still be a politician.
That's right.
My intent is to build up my own structures, parallel and outside of the existing structures, and bring on people who aren't necessarily just hoping to, eventually get rid of the U.S. government. To people who maybe want to reform it as well.
Right.
I mean, you can think of this system that we're building as scaffolding around a building, and that
Right.
scaffolding can be used to make repairs. It can be used to remove parts of the building, and it can be used. You can put netting up there, and when the building collapses, it won't fall on you. And so, we want to build a very broad basis for cooperation among people who have different end goals in terms of their civics, but agree that these institutions are broken, and how they take that information, what they conclude from that's up to them. But so long as they understand these issues and are erudite and honest, intellectually honest, there's a great area of agreement that they can perform under. And beyond that, right now there's obviously many people, more than ever, including a lot of mainstream people who years ago would not have been interested in this kind of thing, but now they are. Now they're open to the idea. I mean, the idea that this system is viable is no longer, that idea is itself no longer viable. You can no longer maintain the fiction that everything is all right, and that the American people are capable of filling their duties. That's just no longer sustainable.
And that can go on forever.
Now that means this is the time to present a pathway forward for those who right now. I mean, they're on the internet and they're posting stuff and they're angry, but no one's giving them a program by which to move forward on that. And that's what we want to do.
Empower people. I love it, because I mean that's what our little show tries to do with our audience and everything we do, like even in the writing and how we
we're not
find out
we're
the
not
writers.
mainstream media.
We've been doing that locally.
Yeah, with Boston Institute for Nonprofit Journalism, and we've been doing some stuff up here. As you're well aware, a lot of people from Boston care about this issue too.
I love it. I'm already just I went on pursuanceproject.org and I put my email in there and I signed up. Like I'm ready to go.
He's all about it.
Yeah, I mean we're very excited to have you on here, that you're able to speak to us today. Where are you at right now, Barrett?
I'm in Dallas.
Oh, Dallas, Texas.
Yeah. So can you leave the state yet or no?
No, I can't leave for another few months. I have to be available for drug tests on any given day.
Yeah,
that
okay.
will be a couple months, and then after that, for the however long I'm on probation, which would be up to a year and a half, possibly less, I can leave the district, the federal district of North Texas, with permission from the probation officer.
Right, but you still can't leave the. Oh, okay. So, but you can still. Can you travel other states then, or?
Yeah, I just have to get permission.
Okay. That's basically the kind of plan I'm on right now too. I feel you. So what do you feel that this is something that, hold on, I forgot what I was going to say.
You forgot your question?
No, so actually what I was going to say is that, I was wondering sort of if there's any, there's been, I guess, people backing, organizations like, let's say, The Intercept, for example, people giving funding to these type of things. And I'm wondering if you're looking at something like that for Pursuance. Is that something you're looking into? And do you think that
we're applying for grants from different foundations. We've identified about a little over a dozen that would be appropriate for this, and we've created some materials to handle those applications. A lot of them, they do their grants acceptances certain points of the year.
Yes,
yes. A series of staggered deadlines. We've already applied to one and been rejected, OpenTech, which turned out to be kind of government affiliated anyway.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
We've had some interesting conversations about which ones are appropriate for us and which ones aren't. Peter Thiel of Palantir apparently.
Yeah, I mean, he funded Transparency Toolkit, so.
Do what?
He did Transparency Toolkit.
One of the guys that we're working with, Shadash.
Shadash.
That's creative Transparency Toolkit, absolutely.
Yeah, and Thiel is down with that, so.
And a lot of tools along those lines. This is actually the other aspect of this is that when we bring in lots of different people, some of whom may not be totally up to speed on what tools are available and how to handle security, this operates also kind of like a needle exchange program. You get the junkies in to get ostensibly just to get clean needles, but while you're there, you give them pamphlets, you give them access to services.
Right.
So we bring in the activists in this one place and then offer them, here's these tools that you can use to collate information. Here's information about using real encryption. Here's this, and this. So this serves a number of functions. I like the needle exchange thing you just said. I'm use a former junkie myself. And the other thing I would like to emphasize about this is that when we reveal the board of directors in this column, what people are going to see is that this is now a mainstream effort. This isn't something where we're just having to get radicalized people involved. This is something where things have deteriorated to such an extent that we now have a great deal of appeal among people with, from the mainstream journalists, mainstream politicians, people who have worked in government at high levels, who are now.
What about the tech industry too? I mean, even the tech industry, are they worried about losing some of their business because they know they're co-opted? Like everyone knows their security is junk now. You know what I mean? Are they even worried? Like, would they join? Or would you even trust them?
You'll have certain kinds of personalities out of that industry get involved as usual. I mean, we always had people who were on the Mozilla Foundation types, involved early on before I got involved anonymous. So that's not difficult.
Right.
I don't think we're going to be looking for people who work for Facebook.
Right. Exactly.
But I think Facebook is their business model secure. I mean, regardless of what they've done wrong and will continue to do wrong, the fact that the founder has a viable shot at running for president, I think is telling. I don't think I don't think they really care about all the activists leaving Facebook. They have plenty more where that came from.
Right.
And so, but that's the thing. And the other issue I was talking to somebody about, somebody in Europe the other day who's going to be on our board of directors. Facebook apparently, while I was away, had become a very popular organizing tool because of its system for setting up groups, and that's changed to some extent. And so now there's a great opportunity to make this, the pursuant system, kind of the gold standard for activist organizing. And so that's just another great instance of timing. You know, the timing has been great on this. You know, obviously I came out of prison right when things had just begun to deteriorate beyond, beyond imagination. And so when the system itself becomes so clearly silly and so clearly just malicious, that provides us an opening to make a very different case to people who, again, 10 years ago would not have been interested in joining a post-cyberpunk insurrection.
Right.
Oh man.
No, it's true. It's
Barrett
like the
Brown's
big thing.
back to save us all.
Right.
That's right.
I remember, like I come from more like the marijuana movement, and especially locally, that's what I'm most known for. It reminds me of the same thing, like 15 years ago, and the change that happened, it became such a popular thing now. And I think the same thing is the other place is what you're talking about right now, Barrett. So I see the same thing.
Movements can jump up quickly, and obviously the transgender issues were not even on the map 4 years ago when I went to prison. I got out. I mean, that's a great example of how quickly things can change. Marijuana is another good example. Gay rights happened pretty quickly historically. The fact that transgender rights happened even quicker than that, I think it's indicative of how fast things can move, and that's obviously partly because of the internet and the information age. And that tells us, that gives us another lesson about what's possible now in terms of changing the conversation.
It's time on a lot of these issues. I'm glad you're bringing this up and working on this and not stopping after all the trouble they put you through. We have some more questions, don't we, too, Lauren? You got more you want to ask?
Well, we have a lot of questions from guests.
We have from the listeners?
Or listeners, yeah.
The people
listeners.
on Facebook land?
Yeah, the people on Facebook Live now.
Do you mind taking some comments from the people, Barrett?
Go for it.
All right, so let's see. So actually, Grant Smith, one of our longtime listeners, asked, Mr. Brown, any thoughts on what happened to Aaron Swartz? Do you think there are occasions where individuals are prosecuted as a form of political retaliation for activism? I know he's asking you right now, but yeah, feel free to answer that.
Well, it's indicative of, obviously the thing about that is it did bring attention to how the DOJ operates. People learned about this case, and they learned, well, he was facing 20 years for this, and, then the prosecutor commented to you says, oh, no, he only had to do 2, he just had to plea.
Yeah, right.
And people, you have to understand, like, that's not proper, obviously. They're just simply, bullying people into pleading to things rather than taking it to court and getting a chance to challenge.
And taking a felony.
And so...
that's a felony too. Like when they say plea, he was going to have to plead to a
exactly.
felony. Someone who's gifted and young and
from our
computers.
hood,
yeah, it's tough.
Around the corner. So.
At some point, I think this is something that people realize we're going to have to choose between our bureaucracy and our geniuses, because if you can't exist in the same world anymore.
That's true. That's actually how I feel about it.
Oh, I love that quote. Can I quote you on that? That's just amazing. Say that again and again for me.
Certainly. We're going to have to choose between our bureaucracy and our geniuses.
It's true.
We see that everywhere.
Absolutely. Barrett's always good. Barrett, you're always good at
We should have you come on every week and give us a quote like that.
You're just good at concise,
we don't even have to have a show now. It's just Barrett quote.
I know, right? Barrett quote of the week. I know for sure that's a good one. And that's absolutely true. look what's happening to so many people. And
yeah, I want to ask you about something because I've seen you posting on some of your page about Free Marty G, and Lauren was telling me something about this. What's going on with that, Barrett Brown?
This is the case I just heard about a week ago or so. The wife of this fellow actually contacted me. There had been a Rolling Stone piece a few weeks back about this fellow, and what he does is this Marty fellow had found Martin Gottesfeld is what his name is, and it's Gottesfeld, and he had learned about this young girl who was being kept at Boston Children's Hospital, and she was being held there against her own wishes and against the wishes of her parents. She had been diagnosed with some mitochondrial disease and had been treated previously with pain medication and mitochondrial medication, for whatever that condition was. And they took her to Boston Children's at some point, and they decided that it was psychosomatic and that her parents were acting improperly by having her treated for this disease that they themselves just knew she didn't have. and that she should instead be getting psychological treatment. And so on the grounds that she wasn't, they managed to get the state to give them custody of the
Section
child.
35? Or?
And this is something apparently that happens. It happens throughout the system. And, you hear about it every once in a while. But apparently this particular hospital has done it quite a bit. It's something kind of endemic to their culture.
Yes.
And so the parents, got involved. They went to try to go through the proper channels to get this rectified. And meanwhile, the girl is sending out origami that when the mom opened it up, it says, "I'm being tortured."
Oh wow.
She did not feel that she could tell her parents over the phone, over the monitored phone conversation. She was have one conversation a week with them, and she was sitting there in utter pain, not being treated, being ridiculed. Apparently, there's a whole lawsuit going into all these details. But so this Marty fellow, he heard about this. This was kind of a minor cause on the internet at that time. I guess 2013, and he got involved, or he was contacted by someone anonymous, apparently, someone identified as being anonymous, when he was out there trying posting, like, how can we do something about this? And he was taught the methods for bringing attention to issues, and he also learned how to hack. And so when Boston Children's Hospital had a fundraising event, he hacked their website at that time, and that brought a huge amount of attention to this issue, as it often does in the past when Anonymous has done this. And she was released, and the new doctors did indeed confirm the original diagnosis, and the implication being that, yes, she actually had been going through this pain, and they had been holding her, torturing her, essentially, this young girl. And so he essentially saved this young girl. But then he was found by the FBI and indicted, and is now being prosecuted under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which we all know quite a bit about, and facing 20 years. And so it's something that, again, Rolling Stones covered it, and there's certain groups out there that, for various ideological reasons, are on it as well. But it's not getting yet the attention I think it needs. And so we've just been working with her to try to get that promoted. Another thing that's happened recently on that, and this is something I'm going to try to push, because every time there's a new event, obviously, within the framework of journalism, that makes it a story again. Unfortunately, that's how things work. But there's something that's happened recently whereby this wife of this fellow posted on YouTube a recording that had been made of another federal court deal that involved this girl, in which the case was explained that she was being tortured and all that. And so she put that on YouTube just to provide background to this. And then the prosecutor, I've seen this correspondence. Prosecutor contacted the public defender who's defending her husband and said, we're going to investigate her unless she takes this video down, and because it's illegal to make recordings in the federal courtroom. And she kindly explained to her lawyer to tell the prosecutor that she didn't record the courtroom proceedings. She bought the recording from the court. Recordings of these things. And so that was a couple days ago, and I guess they'll back off. But what struck out as me is that, according to, it seemed like this, that it was one of these FBI agents that have been sort of scouring the internet for all the information about the cases being put out. And that's something they did quite a bit in my case. And I was, of course,
right,
placed under a gag order, and they said, oh, he's out there, he's manipulating the media. But they just drive them crazy. They don't really think you have the right to talk about your issues online. And so this struck a chord with me, and we're going to try to get that promoted with a couple of other journalists that I'm
It's like they tie every hand behind your back.
Obviously, to the extent you guys, since this is a Boston issue, to the extent you guys can get this
definitely
publicized more.
I want to definitely read more about that and look into that. We got some other people making comments. Some of them are crazy, some are not. If they're crazy, just whatever.
We'll get one of the crazy ones.
You want to have some of the crazy ones? There are. I get this all the time now, and I see that we're tagged on posts together about this. Seth Rich, was he murdered?
No.
I mean, he was murdered, but I mean, was he murdered by Hillary, or was he murdered by some people?
The evidence that has been put forward, either both by Fox News and by some of the people on the conspiracy subreddit, has not panned out, and a lot of them are now kind of acknowledging that, which is good, because there are conspiracies, and it's important that we latch on to the ones that bear out and not the other ones, because then that makes it harder to actually bring attention to the actual conspiratorial misconduct by the government, which happens all the time. But in this case, I'm open to further evidence, but until I see something that doesn't break down into lawsuits, with recriminations among Fox News analysts, I'm still going to be, I'm just waiting to hear that. Now,
and I read all about that.
There was something here that was something beyond just a mugging. It's very possible, but the mugging is also extraordinarily possible.
Right. I mean, if you read the Fox News stuff, the lawsuits, the main guy there, place in it all. He got paid off, and he didn't agree with the bullshit story. Like he basically sued Fox because he didn't want to go along with it after he took the check. It's
right.
he, you know,
and it doesn't mean the story is necessarily wrong, but it does mean there are people out there pushing it on the wrong basis, and that was a lot of the basis for the conspiracy, and so that is a black mark against it.
And as other people are asking, do you think he leaked? Seth Rich was the guy that leaked the emails to WikiLeaks.
Right, and that plays into this original question.
No.
The thing is, I mean, maybe, but the murder thing doesn't really jive with that. I mean, on its face, there's no reason. It doesn't seem to make sense why the DNC would kill the guy after he leaked. All that would, that doesn't help anything. And again, the DNC is not a very trustworthy organization. I just don't. I don't know of any instances in which the DNC has been credibly linked to any murders in the past. I know there's been, anyway, the DNC itself, at any rate, not Lyndon Johnson or anything. But so that I just don't see it yet.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, it's not there. There's no evidence really, besides nutcases.
Right.
What does Barrett Brown think about the Occupy Wall Street? Someone asked.
Well, I was up there. Greg and I went up there to go go meeting with publishers for the book that we were supposed to do about him and about Anonymous. And so I went to, I think I was there on the second day in that square and gave a talk on a live stream about the intelligence contracting problem and how activists need to be aware of this. And that's actually still up on YouTube. Beyond that, I mean, it obviously helps to bring issues to attention, and these things are necessary, but it's just my emphasis is always on how can we, are we still using just through inertia, just the tactics of the past, and if not, why not? We need, to the extent that we can make gains in how we organize and how we keep things flowing and how we maintain momentum, to the extent that we think about the fundamental issues and experiment with them, we're going to see serious gains. Now, to the extent that we just kind of let things, that we depend upon the idea of just amorphous self-organization, some things can come from that. And Anonymous, in some ways, represented that sort of amorphous organization, but Anonymous burned out. And Anonymous, so those are not the things I'm terribly interested in. I'm interested in how we provide a system where everybody has the equal ability to organize within that system, and they can, do so in a way where everyone's on the same page, where everyone's rights and responsibilities are clearly delineated. We're not going to have philosophical arguments about who gets to do this and all that. It'll be something where those arguments don't apply because everyone, again, has the ability to make their own entities, and these entities can grow to the extent that they attract more people. And again, I'm also always dubious about anything, including Anonymous, that has no membrane, as in anyone can come in and become part of it. When you have that, you have all kinds of very emotionally unstable people, people who are just searching for something. You want to be part of a community, and that's not necessarily a huge problem, but it can definitely become one. It definitely, if the purpose of these things is to achieve real results, then that has to be, everything has to be directed towards that. It can't be a self-help group. It has to be something more along the vanguard revolutionary cell. And so those things, again, are all, obviously I was heavily involved in Anonymous and thought a great deal about what was being done, but a lot of what was done by small groups acting kind of self-segregating from the rest of the group. And, Chanology, the massive, very successful Scientology campaign that Greg Hausch and a few other people orchestrated, that was run in large part secretly from a chat room where all of this organization occurred. It didn't just self-happen. It didn't just happen in the way that a lot of Anonymous like to think it happened, whereby we're all equals. There was a vanguard. And so that's my emphasis in that organization.
No, I agree. I mean, we had, just in Boston recently, we had this whole thing with the Olympics. We were kind of partially like on the outside, but there was more of a group that was more dedicated, but we didn't want the Olympics. Basically, the people didn't want the Olympics here. We didn't want the boondoggle. We didn't want the traffic. We didn't want the hassle. We didn't want the corruption. And he
said it was 10 people on Twitter
that
were
the mayor
responsible.
ended up calling it like 10 people on Twitter, and that's what it was. It was just kind of like a group of people got organized and started taking it serious. And it's amazing. I've seen it happen so many times in small campaigns against corporations locally and things and bigger things, and a small amount of people working together You can really make things happen, right, Barrett?
And that's been the template of every successful revolution, even those that ended up turning to dust eventually. But every successful, at least the revolutionary part, it's never really a mass movement. There's masses involved, but there's always leadership, and so it's silly and counterproductive to think otherwise. And so again, so that's those are one of those lessons that we just have to draw upon. We can't ignore those lessons, and we have to build upon those lessons.
Wow. So we're gonna let Warren. This is Warren. He asked you the crazy question earlier. Do we dare to let him ask another question, Laura?
Let him have it.
Let him have it.
Have at it.
Barrett can handle it.
Yeah, Barrett can handle it.
This is the crazy guy.
So our listener Rod Weber says that he was also raided by the FBI with no warrant, and he caught it all on video, and he wonders if you have any suggestions for activists who are unjustly raided by the FBI.
Not really. I don't think I handled it very well myself. So someone to ask. But I mean, my sort of meta suggestion is always look for opportunities to take these difficulties that come up and try to make them work for you. And that's what I tried to do afterwards. I tried to remodel myself while in prison, and
hallelujah to that.
And you have to do jiu-jitsu these things.
That's right.
You can't fight them on their terms. You have to, but again, it's not something that everybody can do, and not everybody has those opportunities that I did. That already had the ability to a public, voice and all that. So sometimes there aren't any good answers, and sometimes the answers do depend upon the specifics, which I'm not familiar with. So I guess the answer is no then.
Crazy guy's not asking crazy guy questions. He's asking hard questions today. He's going back to like your tough times.
You want a crazy guy question?
No,
well,
I mean, we can ask him about the Tupac and Biggie conspiracy. What are you gonna ask him?
Well, another listener wants to know what you think about cross-check.
What is cross-check? I don't even know.
I don't know either.
Yeah, Barrett doesn't know either.
He doesn't know.
I saw that comment and I was like,
Yeah.
what is cross-check? How about you explain what cross-check is to
I
us,
hate
listener? I hate it. You know what?
I
The
think
cross-check is all right. It's just that if you really throw out the stick when you're hitting them against the board, it's just a little overkill. It's okay if you're doing it in open ice.
Mike.
As long as they have all their teeth.
It's hockey. Yeah, in hockey.
And you don't try to take out their teeth.
Yeah.
You don't try to hurt somebody. All right, we're the Young Jerks. We're on EMF Radio. We're talking to Barrett Brown. We've been going a long time. Usually we don't go this long on phone calls because they're tough, but it's Barrett Brown, and it's been a pleasure.
It's been great. He's been great
good
so
content.
far. I guess some of the other questions I'm seeing here is, your opinion on, of course, people are going to bring up Russia.
Yeah, what do you think about Russia and the Trump thing?
I've always been a critic of Russia.
Yes, that's right.
2000. My book that came out as an ebook later on. One of the main criticisms I had of Thomas Friedman was that he went over there in 2000 and said that Vladimir Putin's going to be a great reformer, a great friend of democracy and transparency. Just one of the things he just totally got wrong. Later on, he was also talking about how China will never censor its internet. And so, and later on, of course, when Snowden came out, he's like, oh, we don't really need to know these things. Clearly people like Thomas Friedman will let us know if the government goes too far. He's an expert on authoritarianism. In this case, the idea that was presented that this was something manufactured, that there is no Russia involvement, there was plenty of pieces that just didn't make any other sense other than that there was at least some degree of contact, illicit contact between the Trump people and the Russians. And a lot of the arguments I've seen against this, they seem, a lot of them, I don't want to say all of them, but a lot of them rely on, this is McCarthyism, or this is just anti-Russian, or it's a neocons. Well, I mean, that's fine, but look, if someone who is dismissing this Russia story is not able to refer to the name Paul Manafort, then he doesn't actually know the allegations that are being put forward. I mean, we have Paul Manafort running Trump's campaign. We have his history with being paid by Putin and pro-Putin forces. Well, that's his business, but it is a fact that there is a unsavory and very extensive degree of connections between the Trump people and Russians, and that's just beyond Donald Trump himself expressing this admiration for all these authoritarian leaders.
Right.
And so exactly what happened, that's something, again, I don't know, but neither of these people who are saying nothing happened. Right? And the thrust of the evidence in terms of, and again, you don't have to rely on the CIA on this. You don't have to say, the CIA was wrong about this and they're the CIA, they're the deep state. That's fine. I know that. I've gone up against them. But the evidence does not depend on the CIA.
Right.
The evidence depends on a lot of publicly available information and filings and blah, blah, blah. And there will be more information that comes out this investigation.
Exactly.
Now, again, I don't like the FBI either. But the FBI, in addition to its role as a sort of concierge service for powerful interests, also does go after criminal organizations every once in a while. It goes after the mob, blah, blah, blah. So, we can probably, again, what comes out from this investigation, we'll be able to look and see if they're asserting is backed up by evidence. But we've already, the movement on this has been entirely in the direction of, yes, there was some collaboration here.
Yeah, and they didn't care. Like, that Trump, if you're watching Trump at all, you know he doesn't give a shit except to win. Like, he'll do anything to win. If you haven't figured that out by now, and there was obviously something going on. There was obviously something. I agree with you. Again, I agree with you on everything so far. I love that Thomas Friedman. What was he? What was the quote on that? When he's an expert on fascism.
Well, he's an expert on authoritarian. The thing is, he keeps telling us not to worry about Putin, and then China won't censor the internet, and then he tells us not to worry about the U.S. when Edward Snowden comes forward. He wrote this column. Someone sent it to me. President's the only one I've seen by him yet that I missed while I was in prison. But it was saying, Snowden will be remembered forever as some silly guy, And then of course that's not true. And the argument has moved in Snowden's favor. He's now fairly well regarded by a lot of people. And of course Congress did end up making changes based on his revelations. So he's wrong about that too. What I'm saying is people like Thomas Friedman, they don't know what authoritarianism looks like. They have a proven record of not being able to see it coming, even when the pieces were already there. He's done it with China. He's done it with Russia. And that's, I guess, this is a bigger issue than Thomas Friedman. This speaks to the problem we have in this society where incompetence on that level is rewarded. This is a guy who wins the Pulitzer Prize. Right. This is a guy who's on the Pulitzer Prize board now, and he said the Taliban was gone back in late 2001. And that the Afghans really don't care about civilian casualties. He literally said this. That's what my little book called "Keep Rooting for Putin," which is also a quote from Thomas Friedman. Goes into this. You can read it online for free.
It's hilarious. I love when some people like you gather the evidence and point it out. I want to ask more on the Russian thing. There's a thing with Russian Today. There's been activists and advocates and generals and even political campaigns. Jill Stein eating with. At the Russian Today event with Putin. Would you ever work for Russian Today, or have you done anything with Russian Today? Would you be interviewed by them? What's your stance on that kind of?
I would never work for them, but I've gone on Russian Today a number of times. Yeah. I will go on any outlet, just like I went on Fox. The first outlet I ever went on was Fox to go debate somebody. The first time I went on Russian Today was after Michael Hastings had come back from Afghanistan and took him down McChrystal with his article for Rolling Stone, and he was being attacked by a lot of establishment journalists for doing whatever, and I went on Russian Today. They asked me to come on to defend him, and towards the end, I managed to work in that line about, I was making fun of Thomas Friedman, of course, as usual, and mentioned, he went over there and said Putin was going to be a great guy. And meanwhile, the FSB was clearly involved in the 1999 apartment bombings, and that was the end of the segment. So I try to throw in some anti-FSB, anti-Putin stuff in there, just for fun. I feel like I'm obligated to do so if I'm going to go on Russia Today. But I have no problem going on Russia Today. I've gone on Sputnik too. But if anybody asks me, is Russia Today a piece of shit organization? I'll say, yeah, kind of. And is Sputnik a piece of shit organization? Well, yeah, definitely.
Wow. Did they censor you at all when you said that thing about Putin on the Russian Today piece?
Well, it was live. That's the thing.
It was live.
But Sputnik, I can tell you, Sputnik, I've gone on their radio program a couple of times since getting out. And they'll have a written synopsis on the article linking to the recording. And a couple of times they've misrepresented my comments, pretty distinctly. So, but again, that's the kind of thing you expect from them. And it would be a bigger deal if it weren't for the fact that the same thing happens rather accidentally among the U.S. press, as in someone's going to get things wrong either because they're incompetent or because they're propaganda networks. So. It's not something I can complain about as much as I would in a more ideal world where I can depend on going on a U.S. Outlet and having my views properly conveyed.
Wow, this is a long interview. I want to ask you a couple more things, if you don't mind. Julian Assange went at this journalist from, I think he was with Newsweek and some others. I don't know if he's with Newsweek. I think he might have lost his job. But Kirk Eichenwald or whatever, have you followed this thing?
Yeah.
Who do you think won that?
With this. I didn't know about him until I got out. And he is, he's obviously a silly person. He gets in very silly engagements online, and There was an interesting incident, and I've seen it written about with it, referencing the court records on this thing, where I think the New York Times, he had made a payment to this child porn site that was run by an underage person. He had paid him, and he said, "Oh no, this is for an article I'm doing." And then later on, the court records and all that just did not square with that assertion. He did write the article, but they reprimanded him for it. And this is a guy who, it's not a huge deal. I mean, look, this is a guy who he probably is into child porn. It's illegal, but it's more indicative to me that this is a pretty solid allegation that, again, can be pretty well squared with court records. I've seen a pretty minor website write about it, and it's not something that's ever gotten picked up. And that's fine if it's not true, but I've yet to see any, outlet actually weigh these charges.
Right.
And that's always my problem is just the way in which things that either important or not, could be broad, could be whatever, just don't. It's a very haphazard process whereby these things actually get attention and then get properly evaluated. I just don't think the bulk of our press is capable of dealing with anything that involves something that sounds improbable. And for some reason, there's a lot of people who think it's improbable that a person of stature would be involved in pedophilia, whereas history tells us otherwise. And even modern history tells us otherwise. We had that Pentagon scandal that kind of went away years ago. We had the Speaker of our House who was paying off a young man he had molested. We had another Senator or Representative Mark Foley from Florida, just in the last couple of years alone. And so,
Paul Stanley.
Oh, and Jared Fogle. Jared Fogle, who I'm sure is now one of the leaders of one of the pedophile gangs
Subway.
in prison. So it's just one of those things where again, I am infinitely disappointed with the inability of the press to deal with ambiguity, to deal with issues that might sound silly, but are clearly based in past facts. They're clearly not prima facie absurd, and that's a wide problem that goes beyond this issue. It goes into other just general aspects of the life in a republic, a very complex republic where ambiguity is the order of the day, and there are people conspiring to different ends. This is a republic in which no one really believes in democracy.
Right.
No one. Every time a politician lies or whatever, that's an admission that we don't actually believe in the consent of the governed. And so that's in those circumstances, the semi-rosy picture that a lot of our daytime TV or CNN people still seem to have is just entirely unwarranted, and that's a big problem.
Yep, it's for corporations mostly, I think. Let me ask you about Julian Assange, because some people think he's working for the Russians. Where are you on that? What's your opinion of him? I
don't think he's technically working for the Russians. He has made comments that I'm unhappy with about Trump, for instance. He has been caught up making clear mistakes, saying things that are clearly wrong in the last couple of years. I mean, this goes back days. Everyone knows this. But it's not something that it hasn't quite hit my red line. It's not something where I'm going to go out and denounce him regularly. Or, for instance, if I were asked to work with him on something, on a release or something of that nature, like I've done in the past, sort of, I wouldn't turn it down just because I disagree with what he's done in that regard. But the Russia thing is a complicated deal from the standpoint of the ethics of leaking. I actually don't disagree with him leaking those DNC emails, because regardless of where it came from, they are legitimate materials about a powerful organization that has engaged in wrongdoing. And I understand those who don't want to work with him for other reasons. For instance, the idea that maybe he didn't release stuff on the Republicans, or the idea that he was trying to influence the election. So to the extent that he did have materials, which I don't think I know, about the Republicans that could have hurt Trump and didn't release them, that I would have a problem with. But I don't know that yet. He is, a lot of people that I've worked with, I have considerable disagreements with their conduct and with their beliefs. That includes Jeremy Hammond, even.
Right.
And so, but it's one of those things where I don't have a firm answer on what's appropriate, who's appropriate to work with, what is the red line, what should the red line be where you don't do it anymore. It's a complicated issue, but I try to at least be candid about it when there are issues, because otherwise we turn into a lot of the stuff that we're fighting.
Awesome. We got a lot of more crazy comments, but we're running out of time.
Yeah. Well, you can see it on our Facebook too.
Yeah.
Check
I mean,
it out.
I
We can
just
answer
think
some
one is
later
funny
maybe, but-
because this guy Dominic writes, he loved Big Brother. Is Barrett Brown right now? I don't know where you said that. Did you say that, Barrett?
I don't.
I didn't hear that.
Do you love Big Brother?
It's like a
That's
Bill
between
Hicks,
me and
Alex
Big Brother.
Jones going. Yeah.
Our relationship is no one's business.
That's right. That's right.
I am Bill Hicks.
He can neither confirm nor deny.
I am Bill Hicks.
You're Alex Jones.
You know who said that? I am Bill Hicks.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
I'm
Do
sorry.
you have a
We're going off.
secret
Let's start.
identity?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going off
It's
the
purely
deep end.
sexual in nature.
This was a great. I can't. We want to thank you so much for spending the time.
Yeah, you really covered so much, and you brought people up to speed as well as letting people know what you're working on currently and how they can get involved. Like, someone like me, for instance, who misses being involved. This is a really great place to start because I do see you working on trying to solve a lot of problems that I know, I noticed as well working in this. So this is like really inspiring and really, I hate to feel hopeful again, but you're doing it to me, Barrett.
I'm sorry.
Why must
Remember,
you make
people
me?
can go to pursuanceproject.org and see the basics of what we're doing. They can
Right.
sign up. And they can donate bitcoins to pay our project developer and keep abreast of the project.
Thank you again.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're gonna give you a round of applause for everything you've been through, everything you're doing. And will you keep us updated on just everything? Like even check in with us. We'd love to speak to you like every once in a while on all the news stories and the information you have.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Barrett. It's really
Thank
good
you.
to have you on. Guy's gonna cry.
We're the Young Jerks here every Saturday at 6 p.m. That was Barrett Brown we were speaking to. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Amazing. We're going to take a break. We've been going for a while. Again, we want to thank him big for just going for so long with us.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for hitting the ground running when you got out. I know that must take so much strength. I'm inspired by that as well.
I'm inspired by the show he just did for us.
yeah.
It's all about us now.
all about
'cause
us.
He just gave us like awesome content, like really
I know
good
he's
shit.
tons
like,
of meat.
All like policy wonk, like really good. And he speaks
Barrett's
well.
smarter than like anyone. Like
I love
Barrett's
some of his phrases.
Barrett's
It's
a
just-
genius. That's
I
why he's
love-
not going to be
I
around
have a
much
boy
longer.
crush on him.
You gotta. Well,
I'm totally straight male, but I got a little crush
you
on
think
Barrett
you
Brown.
have a crush on him?
I don't. Thomas Friedman. He called it the expert on what was it?
On authoritarianism.
Authoritarianism. That was a good one.
All right.
And then
we
we found out he's a
CBDplease.com,
pedo.
Yeah,
your
we gotta
best
go.
source for medical
We'll be
quality
back.
CBD products.
We gotta get another
is proud
guest.
to
We'll be back in a
sponsor the
minute.
Young Jerks radio show.
You are listening to The Young Jerks on WEMF Radio.
Hey, Salon.